Good afternoon, everybody, and I want to welcome you to this webinar that we have set up here for you guys today. I believe we are all going to have a tremendous time. We have a remarkable group of individuals here that will be answering your questions. And so let's dive right in. Today, we'll be talking about agentic AI and the zero-click internet that it powers. So we're going to be diving into how it is transforming how people discover, evaluate, and buy. At the center of agentic AI really is search, and without a strong retrieval process or context, AI agents cannot deliver trusted and accurate experiences. So I have three wonderful individuals here with me today that are going to help you answer the question, is your business ready for agentic AI in 2026? And I'm going to give each one of them an opportunity to introduce themselves here. And I'll start with you, Carrie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Carrie Rich. I'm VP of Product Management at LucidWorks. LucidWorks is an AI-powered search company working with a large variety of industries to power their search experiences. And I have been in the AI space for my entire career for over a decade in different industries ranging from healthcare to finance to cybersecurity to retail publishing and now, of course, software at LucidWorks. And I'm really excited to talk about where the industry is going, what we're seeing in the industry, and how we're seeing that evolve.
That is awesome. So we'll be getting like real in-depth, someone who has like a wealth of experience in this conversation. Next, I'm going to give it to Fani. I'll let you introduce yourself.
So Fani Main. Thanks, Josh. But glad to be here. I work for a company called Boston Scientific, which is based out of Marlborough, Massachusetts. I currently lead the AI product delivery for the organization. So essentially, that means helping ideas, business problems that have potential for AI use cases to leverage the potential of AI and kind of see them through. Prior to that, I've spent a decade in B2B world as well, building out B2B commerce, B2C commerce type of applications, including for Boston Scientific in the middle of COVID. So love the intersection of B2B and AI and looking forward to this conversation with this great panel here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Mike, last but not least.
Hey everyone, Mike Callahan. I'm Director of Digital Delivery at Don Foods. So we're a global manufacturer and distributor of bakery ingredients and supplies. So think we make donut mixes, cake mixes, fillings. We'll sell you the boxes to put your products in. Just really anything a bakery would need to operate, we sell. We're a family-owned company based out of Michigan. I'm in the Boston area along with Fani. So our customers range from small mom and pop bakeries all the way up to supermarkets and universities. And my role really is to oversee the development activities for our e-commerce group. I joined the company about 6 years ago when we were building out e-commerce and using composable architecture. So it's been cool leveraging those types of tools, but now actually seeing how things are evolving and getting into the agentic world. So it's never a dull moment.
Pretty exciting. It sounds like a very yummy industry to be in as well, Mike. Okay, so I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Josh Bidzak-Shevsky, and I work at Metric Marine as head of digital sales and marketing. Metric Marine is a company that supplies technical consumables specifically to the cruise industry. So we work to get the cruise lines what they need, when and where they need it. And I'm super excited to be here with you guys. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. I feel like I want to take notes also. So yeah, let's dive in. Like I mentioned, today we'll be unpacking what it means for B2B and B2C organizations, and share practical steps to help them get ready for 2026 when it comes to agentic AI. So let's get into our first question here. Carrie, this one's for you. How are AI agents already transforming retail and B2B and shopping and buying behaviors compared to traditional digital experiences?
Yeah. I would say the way people shop is fundamentally changing. And so we're seeing reactions to that from business leaders. In fact, in a recent study with a large number of business leaders, 85% of them reported that they believe some websites will become completely obsolete as the prevalence of agents rise. And 98% of those business leaders said that it's going to be important for their brands to be discoverable by AI. So we're seeing these shifts in how businesses are anticipating the rise in AI agents. And at the same time, we're seeing consumer behavior shift, and consumers are now shopping through tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and others. And according to Routers, in the last holiday season, we saw that shoppers were using AI-based chatbot services 42% more than the prior year. And overall sales grew 4% that year. But we also saw that product returns increased from 20% in the prior year up to 28%. So it means that it's going to be increasingly important to ensure that your AI system and your suite of agents are set up to support this evolving landscape. You're going to want to control for hallucinations and make sure that consumers are recommended actually relevant content wherever they are. And that is really important because AI agents are starting to redefine already who owns that customer relationship. Because instead of going directly to retailer sites, consumers are letting agents roam freely across hundreds of different sites and then pull the content or the products that are best for them. So this means that brands are going to have to shift as well. Brands that are optimized just for human navigation may fail to appear in those agent-driven paths. So we're seeing it from all different places, whether it's consumer behavior or the reaction of brands and businesses to the shift.
It's very interesting. And Mike, given your customer range, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean the returns is interesting to me. I mean it just sort of highlights, as this evolves, just the importance of having robust product data to make sure your products are surfacing and making sure if these agents are scanning the sites, the product data is clean and has a clean transaction and really being able to react to unintended consequences. If you're seeing more returns, trying to dive in what's driving that, what do we need to tweak to improve that. So it's pretty interesting to hear those numbers.
Okay, so we heard one side being returns. Carrie, this question is for you. Can you share any compelling examples where agentic AI has actually enhanced the customer journey, right? So whether it be in discovery, evaluation, conversation, etc.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of different examples over the past couple of years. One that I think of is Comcast is using an LLM assisted search to power their Ask Me Anything tool for their agents to use. So we've seen a lot of folks starting with their own internal customer service people and giving them access to agents and to conversational chat experiences that allow them to then serve their customers. And we've seen that those particular tools have had pretty substantial impacts on efficiency. With the Comcast tool, they saw that agents using the tool spent about 10% fewer seconds per conversation containing one of those searches. So that actually translated to millions of dollars annually in savings for them. As we continue to see this grow, we're starting to see the rise in agents recommending more content or even potentially over time starting to take action with consumer oversight. And I do think that's really important. And surveys have shown too that consumers still want to have a voice and a decision process within that particular flow. They are okay with agents saying, here's a product and adding it to their cart, but they want to be the ones to make the purchase. And so I think up until that point, we're seeing a lot of interesting innovation.
That's amazing. That's the amount of money that they were able to save is pretty interesting as well. Um, and now, Fonny, I have a question coming up for you, but before we move on to that, Mike, do you have anything that you wanted to add? Do you have any examples where AI is actually enhancing or making the customer journey much better?
Yeah, I mean, you see it, at brick and mortar and online, like the brick and mortar, just the layouts, more and more, you're seeing more and more of the, companies that are leveraging AI just on the store layouts and leveraging the data, to help merchandising and increase those conversion rates. In the B2B online space, I think I've seen a lot of, agents, especially in some of these highly technical industries where, you know, it could be an instrument or something and just a normal comparison product A to B is doesn't really cut it. So you've got highly skilled folks that are looking for a specific answer that can differentiate a product, and they're using these agentic searches to actually give them the answer that they want, and kind of going back to that returns conversation, that can also help avoid unnecessary returns if you're not buying the right product.
That's interesting. Fonny, so I have a question with regard to RAG specifically for you. But before I dive into that, what advice would you give to anyone who's sort of wary of a digital or an AI agent? Anyone who feels like, I don't know if I should be trusting my information to an agent,
Well,
but
first of all, I think Carrie and Mike already touched on it. Great points, right? So, look, agents are a great definition by Mike and Carrie, but agents are no longer an option, and it's happening, right? So, yes, they're evolving, but there's a huge adoption. There was a recent report that said, I can't remember the report, but that talked about sort of the proliferation of agents, how agents are being purpose-built for a lot of different things. So these agents are spectacular in the purposes for the purpose of their build. And that's it's unavoidable. So as long as you're in the keep the human in the loop when you're deploying these agents and grounding those agents with the truth information, to your point earlier about RAG type of approach, and making sure that those agents are you have a defined purpose as a defined objective, they're trustable and they're being used. And Kerry pointed to that, right? So it's so I guess my point is it's no longer an option. The companies are going to use it, and it's just a matter of believing in it and using it. And there are some really good use cases, like customer support is a great use case, where it's being heavily used, and there's some where less sort of prevalent, but I think it's going to become more and more adopted.
I totally agree. I think even the small mom and pop company can start to use something like this to help with some of the heavy lifting that comes with just taking care of the customers. And so with regard to RAG, the R in RAG is retrieval, and it's usually more often than not overlooked. Why is this such a critical piece for delivering accurate, context-aware AI experiences? And this question is also for you, Fonny.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. So you use the word RAG as if everybody's supposed to know that acronym.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
You tell
funny.
them what it means.
But the point, I guess, is the words like LLMs or RAGs have become sort of words that we come to know in the last, I would say, 3 years, right? If you asked RAG 3 years ago and before ChatGPT, people wouldn't know that, or now people do. So and the other thing about RAG is, and I was listening to this podcast not too long ago about RAG, and in the retrieval augmented generation, retrieval comes first, R comes first, right? So retrieval is the grounding of the information that the LLMs are going to look for to make sure the information they're going to produce is actually accurate, that is grounded, that is citable, as in some citation. So augmented generation comes later. So in practice, which this means that pulling from companies' trusted sources such as product and policy documents, product catalogs, if they have contracts and other sort of citations. So in the context of the B2B or B2C for that matter, It's really important because grounding for accuracy is critical, especially for product recommendations, pricing, which can vary from customer to customer, especially in a contract pricing scenarios. You have policy answers that differ. Um, and if there's latest catalogs that a company is offering, that information needs to be sort of real time as possible. So that knowledge base needs to be provided to or made available to the models so that they are not hallucinating, right? And then they talked about context aware. So it needs to, when the customer is on the website, right, looking for certain information such as order history or account terms or region availability, that information is very specific to that session, for that customer, for that account. So that needs to be very sort of grounded in real truth. So that's where retrieval of the information pertaining to the request comes into play. And of course, the freshness. The information needs to be relevant, new information. So if the new SKUs are added, SKUs are added, or inventory is added, or promotion was updated based on something happening in the market, that information needs to be real time, near real time. Again, the rack comes into play because you're making that information readily available, or new information available. And of course, the cost. Models, LLMs, as you start using them, are not cheap, right? So there is some cost to keep calling these models. And strong retrieval allows smaller, cheaper models to perform well because the factual lift is done by the index. There is still an index component when you do the retrieval. And then from that index is what the model pulls. So there is a little bit of a sort of, not having to go every single time and look for the same information. All that provides control for the enterprises. The retailers and B2B sellers decide which sources to expose, protecting the brand integrity and reducing misinformation. So that's why I think retrieval is such a critical component, and it makes an argument as why RAG comes the first in the retrieval comes first in the RAG argument.
No, I totally agree. And I think, Carrie, I'm going to give you the mic with this next question. Is there any specific, or what specific metrics should businesses be tracking to measure the effectiveness of their retrieval?
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep in mind with the retrieval program that there's a lot of ways to influence the effectiveness of search and recommendations in your experience. So this means taking into account how you're approaching that retrieval approach, which is often misunderstood, as Fani was saying, that you could take a lot of content and throw it at an LLM and then say, okay, now spit out a response. But the more content that you throw at an LLM, the more likely you are to see hallucinations, to see the LLM go off the rails. And you almost want to treat the LLM like it is someone searching your system, which means that you need to take into account your own hybrid search methodologies. So you want to use very advanced techniques to retrieve the right information using models that might not even be large language models. You can use your more traditional embeddings-based models to pull out the right context from a product in your catalog or from content in your enterprise corpus, and then only send that hyper relevant information to the large language model. And that allows you to take advantage of some of the sophisticated chunking approaches that are coming out, more semantic based chunking, more hyper relevant based chunking. And by doing that, then the metrics that you can use are going to be, in many ways, your traditional search metrics. Because if you treat the large language model like it is someone else who is searching your system, and it is essentially taking the content you're giving it and then translating it for your users in a way that's going to make sense to them, you can use metrics like MRR, looking at the position of the first relevant result you pass along to the large language model. You definitely want to keep precision, how many of the retrieved documents that you're providing to the model are actually relevant. And you want to keep recall as well, since precision alone isn't going to tell you if you missed any relevant content to send to the large language model, you're going to want to keep that recall as one of the metrics that you're tracking. And then another one that I like to track specifically in the context of large language model AI practices is context window utilization. And that goes back to what I was saying at the very beginning of this, which is you can take a whole bunch of content and throw it at the large language model. As context windows get larger, that gets a little bit easier to do. But what I like to track is what percentage of that context window is consumed by relevant versus irrelevant content. That allows you to get really precise with the content you're giving the large language model, which then allows the large language model to be really precise with the content that it is providing to your end users.
That's extremely interesting. And to take it a step further, I think I'm going to give this one to you, Florny. We are noticing that more and more businesses are actually using multiple AI modules behind the scenes. And so I guess the question is, what does effective AI orchestration really look like at scale or at an enterprise level? And how can businesses successfully manage multiple models or systems working together? And is there a framework that we can use for deciding whether we should go single agent versus multi-agent?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one for Monday afternoon. So let's define what an orchestrating AI means, right? So, I mean, again, these are terms that are new to us. In the IT technology world, they've been using this words for a long time. But like an AI model, so just for audience, in the context of AI models, orchestration generally refers to the I guess the process of coordination, managing, integrating multiple AI components, tools, or other services so that they work together. So again, the general definition of orchestration, but it's slightly different pieces comes together. It's about making sure that the right model pipeline or workflow is triggered at the right time, right, with the right data to achieve a desired outcome. So that's sort of the definition that I typically go with from an orchestration perspective for AI models. With regards to your question, Jacqueline, so effective orchestration at an enterprise scale looks less like one giant model doing everything and more like a smart control layer that routes works to specialties, right? So think of this as, you make a request in commerce, for example, you have a small focused agents for things like product search, pricing, validation, contract lookup, or fraud checking, for example, and checkout flow. And an orchestration layer that keeps the customer context decides which of those specialists to call, right? So each of these has their specialties, like I was mentioning before. It retries or falls back when something fails, and then it stitches the results together before handing them back. So there's a mother model, and then there are sub models that are sort of working behind the scenes to sort of address the original request or the ask from the user. To manage these multiple models, you need three practical things. One, I think, is a shared context and a canonical ID. So every agent sees the same customer, right? You can't have I ask something and someone else has asked something. You can mix up the answers. SKUs and contract facts. A lightweight verifier that does the consensus step to resolve disagreements when there is one. And strict operational controls model for versioning for latency and cost gates. So which kind of does the human checkpoints for high risk steps. So those three things would have come together to make that happen. As for when to use a single agent versus a multi-agent question that you asked, Josh Bed, if the task is simple, and low risk and latency sensitive, like a product lookup, right? It's simple. You have a SKU number, and you plug it in, you get that. Or you look up an FAQ, which is straightforward knowledge base, inventory checkup, for example. The single optimized agent is sufficient. However, if the task is a multi-step, which needs some level of domain expertise, workflows, touches multiple systems within your company's sort of tech stack, like an ERP or a database, then you will need like an orchestration that to split the work across specialists and orchestrate the work back to the requester or the user, right? So I guess to long-winded answer, my advice is start small, measure into success, and add more specialties only when they clearly move the business metric. Does that answer your question?
It more than answers my question. And I love the idea of like specialty and allowing each agent, handle what it specializes in. That's brilliant. And thanks for really breaking it down in a way that the audience can keep up. Mike, I know that I haven't really talked to you in a second. Is there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, I think, it's funny as you were talking, that orchestration, you just imagine if you didn't have that orchestration, you just have this one mega agent doing it all. Like we are talked about cost, like, you need that. And almost in the realm of kind of the composable commerce, like you need the specific things to do the one thing that they do well, and you put them all together and they fit nicely. So I think it all kind of, it's pretty interesting, and just, highlights, it is nice. It would be great if you had one agent to rule them all, but the reality is if you want it to work the way it's intended, you need to focus on those specific tasks and make sure that they're done well.
I completely agree. And Mike, since we're talking here, let's just carry on. What are some of the challenges that you've seen or faced or experienced when coordinating multiple modules or systems? And then especially for you, Mike, maybe you can talk a bit more about certain complexities that exist within the F&B space.
Yeah, I mean, I think governance is huge, and we touched a little bit on it, but just like there's so much every day, there's something coming out, and everyone's excited to use and leverage all these new tools. I think, it's not unlike any other software in an organization where you can't just have folks going out and buying or plugging in whatever tool that they want. So you need governance to make sure that folks know what the individuals are using, and hard enough to manage reporting and data without AI. But if you've got the Wild West and you're not focused on who's using what, I think it's important to just make sure there's governance around that. I think in the B2B food and beverage, I mean, I think there's a lot of back office stuff that the AI can help with, like forecasting, and just there's tons of opportunity in the space. But again, it's if you don't focus on processes, and like you can't just plug something in and expect it to work magically if you don't have consistency on process across your distribution channels. Then you're going to run into the same problems you run into anywhere else. So you got to make sure that those things are tightened up pretty nicely.
I completely agree. Fani, have you experienced any challenges with orchestrating multiple models? Or have you?
Yeah, I think Mike touched on it, right? So, AI is non-deterministic. It's I don't know if that's super well understood, because we're so used to 1 + 1 is equal to 2, and then equals 2, and then that's always the case, right? So AI is probably works on probability. It still it is. Yeah, everything about reasoning, everything is probabilistic, anyways. So the one big challenge is keeping outputs consistent. So when multiple models are involved, especially if product IDs, pricing, and contact terms don't align across systems, you will get a slightly different answers, right? You will also run into conflicts when models disagree, or costs and latency creep up as orchestration gets more complex. In sort of the B2B, B2C world that Mike alluded to, and Katie talked about this earlier as well, solving this means standardizing data across catalogs, right? So on contracts, making sure that it's again grounded, going back to your original question around dragging. adding simple verification step. It could be a human in the loop and deciding when human needs to step in. Without that type of discipline, even small errors can cascade into lost orders and incorrect codes and compliant issues. So I would say all of the above. And I think, human in the loop is going to be the sort of the best medicine we have so far.
Great. And just to anyone who's listening, I think it's very, very, very important to keep a human in the loop at all points. Just because it's technology. We never know. As much as we trust them and we know that they are doing a great job, just and like he said, deciding when a human should step in, I think is a very important part of the process. Carrie, I think I'm going to give this question to you because you have such an interesting perspective and, you deal with so many different industries. So when people say enterprise grade AI, right? What does that actually mean in practice, especially when it comes to scalability, security, and governance, like both of them just touched on?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so enterprise data is very complex and it's layered, and there's a lot of data. There's a lot of irrelevant data within an enterprise data set. So, enterprise grade AI is about having that robust end-to-end system that can handle ingestion, data enrichment, robust and sophisticated retrieval, and governance of the data, the model outputs in ways that enterprise can trust. So in practice, that means that for scalability, for example, enterprise search might span billions of layered documents with different levels of nesting or different permission controls. And so an enterprise grade AI program doesn't just take all those documents and, like I said, give them to an LLM. It goes through the documents, it chunks them appropriately, gets the relevant information while also maintaining the structure of the data and the context around the data, while still balancing the cost factor of that. And that's where a lot of the conversation around orchestration is so interesting, because you can take advantage of lower cost models for some of that work, or other types of models, while still getting the benefits of the large language models. And then for commerce platforms that maybe have millions of SKUs, enterprise grade AI has to deliver consistent and low latency performance at scale. So you still have to control for speed, which means that there's a lot of data processing that you have to do at index time of your catalog, because you don't want your end user to experience latency as they are working with your system. And in addition, the data, to be scalable, it has to support global audiences, multiple languages. That's where context continues to be really important. And it has to update dynamically, whether your catalog is changing or your enterprise data is changing, without sacrificing speed or accuracy. So scalability is really important. And scalability is so much about the being able to understand your complex content and keep the context without sacrificing costs, without blowing up expenses. And then security is the other bucket you mentioned. And commerce and enterprise search both involve highly sensitive data, whether it's customer information, transactions, contracts, IP. Enterprise grade AI is going to ensure that that data is protected, whether it's through encryption, whether it's through access controls, which are also, we found, very important in B2B transactions as well. Certain businesses may have access to certain aspects of your catalog and other businesses may not. And so being able to have a system that can maintain those relationships at a very deep level and only provide access at the right level and consistently provide that access at the right level is really, really important, while also maintaining compliance with both national and global standards. And then lastly is governance. So you mentioned governance, and in the commerce space, I think about governance around enforcing business rules. What kind of recommendations do you allow, while also accounting for brand agreements that you may have and pricing, promotions. So that's where the human in the loop is super important, to be able to set those governance, those rules and guardrails around the system so that the system operates within the bounds of the business. And in enterprise search type experiences, this means grounding your answers. And I would argue that grounding is super important for commerce too. Here's why I'm recommending this content for you, attributing the content, attributing the answers, and then continuing to respect that role-based access. So a true enterprise grade AI program is going to have transparency, auditability, and policy controls, as well as rules management controls, so that organizations can trust the outputs of the program you have in play.
I completely agree. And I think starting, or maybe not starting with, but including the why is such a big piece to, like, helping the customer understand what is being recommended to them. Like, this is why I'm giving you this. I think that would help a lot. Fanny, I'm actually going to kick the mic back to you to see if there's anything you wanted to add to everything she just said, but especially if you could touch on how organizations can ensure that the AI efforts are actually meeting real world operations and compliance standards, and where exactly does the human element actually come into play?
Yeah. I don't know how to follow Carrie, so because that's an
I know.
excellent answer. I'll try. I'll try. But I think the one word I think she used half a dozen times in her response was enterprise, right?
Mhm.
So I guess if the best way to sort of make sure that the AI efforts meet real operational and compliance standards is treating these AI systems as another enterprise system, because we are kind of accustomed to how to the processes, ownership, monitoring, audit, version control, etc. These are processes that have been in place for some time. So sort of following those processes, and with using AI as sort of as an enabler, right? That's how I view AI. You have business processes that aren't fundamentally changing because you have AI. It's just making things better, faster, smoother, in some cases more efficient, etc. So you need to log what model was used, what models were used in plural, what data was retrieved, why a decision was made, transferability, explainability, and accountability, and being able to roll back. So you need to build those sort of things into your sort of design. The human element that we keep talking about in this session is critical, unavoidable. I mean, it's essential for defining, as a point of risk, defining policies as to what is right, what is wrong. So there's got to be a clear delineation of that. Reviewing edge cases, don't leave those edge cases for if that might happen, the if will happen someday, and approving high stakes actions like B2B codes and contract changes that has to be done human driven. So it's funny, I'm actually just finishing up a paper on the framework for guidelines on product delivery and that type of thing, where I talk about some of these things, and happy to share that document with the audience. But it speaks to sort of the things that all enterprises are trying to tackle as AI becomes a mainstay in our conversations.
I love that. And yes, we would absolutely love to share that with that document when you have it ready with the audience. I'm sure they would appreciate that. Speaking of audience, don't want to leave you guys out. As we come near to the end of this webinar, you guys are more than welcome to start putting your questions into the chat. And so that when we come to an end, I'm sure our beautiful panel will be more than happy to answer some of your questions. I like to think of AI as the new oil, right? Or the new black gold. It's the biggest thing in town. Meta is investing 600 billion. Apple is also investing 600 billion. Google is putting 250 billion. Microsoft says they'll be putting 80 billion per year. So we're seeing big numbers here. Mike, I'm going to give you this question if you don't mind. Where do you see companies sort of over-investing or putting too much emphasis on their AI strategies? And what is the or what are some foundational areas that they tend to skip or overlook in the process?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I look at it from kind of my standpoint as a consumer of some of these software that's rolling out and having to pick and choose, which ones to engage. I think what I've been seeing is it's growing so quickly and there's so much coming out that, um, you know, it, a lot of the actual implementation and execution pieces are kind of overlooked where it's, not typical with any other software. It'll take 2 weeks, but, just actually like understanding, how is this going to solve the problems within my organization? But I think what I've been seeing is just not as much focus of like, here's the tool, but how do you actually, integrate it into your systems? I think things are moving so quickly that that often seems to be getting overlooked. And then I guess just on the internal side of it is just investing in your people and developing those new skill sets of like Bonnie and Carrie, you were saying earlier, like this is happening, it's here. So you know, investing in your team to understand what prompting is, the agentic, how to refine criteria. I think it's a critical time for that right now, just to get the baseline. And then as you're evaluating software and those types of things, your team will have more context, they'll have a little bit more, they can ask better questions and in the evaluation of, what you're looking to implement on your site.
So, Mike, my follow-up question is, do you have any practical steps that you would recommend that these companies take to avoid costly mistakes when it comes to actually seeing ROI?
I mean, I think Carrie might have hit on it a little earlier, is just the tracking the KPIs and having a clear hypothesis and what problem you're trying to solve, and going in and like understanding what the problem of your customer is, and how is this actually going to solve that problem. You're going to have a difficult time measuring success if you don't put that work up front, and understanding what what your software or your tool or whatever it is you're trying to do with the AI, how that's solving those problems. And if you can't measure it, and it's going to be hard to justify that spend.
I agree. Before you get started with anything, I think it's always very important to ask yourself, what does success look like? And then being able to go back and track that. And Carrie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mike was saying around KPIs being really important, establishing those, being able to track those. And also, Fani had mentioned this earlier, being able to experiment. And I think it's really important as you're evaluating different agentic solutions, choosing tools that allow you to experiment, because that first try may not have that positive ROI yet. It takes a few more tries to get to that positive ROI. So the more flexibility you have in experimenting, the more successful you're going to be. And having a platform that allows you to do that means you can try different solutions for different use cases. And Fani had mentioned this earlier as well around specialization. And there was actually a study that Amazon did that looked at the effectiveness of very focused agents versus very general agents. And they found that the more focused the agent is on a particular task, the more likely you are to have positive business results. So this goes into the experimentation and also being able to not just experiment with one agent in multiple ways, experimenting with a bunch of different agents and then being able to tie them together, but allowing them to be hyper specialized is going to increase your likelihood of business success.
It sounds like the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, applies to agentic AI as well. It's important that we make sure that our agentic AIs actually specialize in something. Okay, and so this is my final question. This has been such a I don't know, impactful conversation. It's been so much knowledge that's been shared, and I really appreciate every single one of you guys. And this last question I want to direct to every single one of you. So we'll take turns. We'll start with Carrie, then Mike, then Fani. And the question is, can you share any recent examples or case studies of B2B or B2C companies that are already seeing measurable ROI from improved search or agentic AI adaptation?
Yeah,
Or we'll
yeah.
start
So I
with you,
mentioned Yeah, I mentioned
Amazon.
Comcast earlier with their 10% improvement in fewer seconds per conversation. We also, Wayfair did something very similar and published the results where they used an LLM-powered chat interface for their customer service agents. They also saw an improvement. They saw a reduction in average handle time for their agents. So that's a key metric that they're tracking in the customer success space. So we definitely have seen measurable impacts from those kinds of tools that are supporting the customer service space. We're also seeing the emergence, although I haven't seen quite as many studies yet on the ROI of these, but we're seeing such an increase in prevalence that one can assume they're having some sort of impact, where a lot of B2C companies retailers are introducing their own experiences. We have seen that Amazon has had a lot of success in engagement with Rufus. We're seeing Walmart, Home Depot, so many are introducing their own customer-facing agentic AI tooling, and I can only imagine that will increase exponentially.
I agree. It is always so hard to follow Carrie because she answers the question in its entirety. But Mike, do you have any examples that you're seeing in the real world of ROI that's happening from using
Yeah, I
agentic
mean, like you
AI?
said, she's tough to follow. Um, Cover a couple of the ones I was thinking of. I think going earlier too is just some of the customer service chat bots. I think you're seeing such a improvement, and you're interacting with the chatbot, but you can tell the answers that you're getting are a lot better and more efficient in what you're looking to do. So a lot of companies are rolling those out, but that's an area that I think is definitely you're seeing successes with.
And I find that what usually helps too is when the chatbot is so upfront about being a chatbot, when it's not pretending to be a human, when it's saying, "Hey, I am this agent and I would love to help you." So in my experience, that's what I've seen. Fine. Last but not least, do you want to add anything to the examples that they've provided?
Like I said, these two are hard to follow in a way, but I'm going to try to, because I'm from a completely different industry, healthcare that is. Hopefully I can use. Look, I spend a lot of time sort of learning and reading through articles where agents and chatbots and other sort of AI enabled tools are being used. There are a number of sort of healthcare is probably one of the industries where there's a lot of good work being done in adopting AI at different facets. I know of this company, I believe it's like Omega Healthcare or something like that. They did a revenue cycle management tool, supposedly helped. This is an article I read on Business Insider a while ago. Some 15,000 hours, employee hours per month were saved by automating repetitive tasks. There's significant document reduction, up to 40%. Turnaround time was faster by 50%. Apparently, the accuracy was almost 100%, 99.5%. So that's the Business Insider article. I can certainly share that. And there's many, many examples of where, especially when you have like we all said, when you have sort of a purpose-built, specific expert agents that has a purpose, has access to the right data, it can do wonders. And that's what I was seeing in this healthcare industry.
I love that. And so it sounds like regardless of your market or what industry you are, there is or there are a ton of advantages to using agentic AI. And so now I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. And Mike, this first question I want to point towards you. The question is, What are the first steps to starting to use agentic AI, and how do you measure early wins in engagement and or conversions?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to just measuring, being clear about what you're looking to solve, what problem, like what you're going to measure, and leveraging existing tools. Like if you have an A/B testing tool, then you can compare search results to your traditional flows compared to the agentic. So don't discount things that are already in your toolbox, but I definitely highlight focusing on the problem you're solving and what you're going to measure, because that'll make it much easier to determine if it's a success or a failed POC or pilot or whatever you're doing.
I completely agree. Funny, this next question I'm going to give to you. It says, where do companies often go wrong with AI investments, and what are practical moves to ensure real business impact?
Yeah, so I'm going to plug this thing again, document this paper I'm working on. My apologies. But I will share the paper as a as a makeup for it. So this could be a contrarian view. So a lot of focus right now is being focused is being on model quality, data pipelines, um, sort of the sophistication, agents, orchestration, everything we just talked about, right? I believe the focus on the processes, stakeholder management, prioritization, picking the right projects, use cases, change management, ownership of the application when it's sustained, treating this as an enterprise application, and making sure that it has its own life, and that it can have its own life once this application is going to transition to a business owner. That's not being properly paid attention to, and that's what I see is the risk. There's a lot of exuberance around adopting AI, which is great, but I think as the exuberance starts to fall off and you have a real product working and being used, it needs support, and that's where companies are often going wrong. You probably know this article that MIT published from recently. This is back in August, not too long ago. 95% of the project pilots were failed because of many different sort of reasons. If you read the report, there's one of the main reasons is actually not having those processes in place. So that's kind of my take on why companies often go wrong with AI investments.
Thank you. And again, audience, we will make sure to get that paper out to everyone. Carrie, this one I think makes sense for you. How does a strong search and retrieval boost personalization and ROI? And what are some common hurdles that teams should watch out for?
Yeah, so to boost personalization, the context matters a lot. So I've harped on the importance of sending the right information, the right amount of information to the model. You also want to send the right amount of information about the user's intent and what they're looking for in that moment. And that part is really important as well. There's different types of context about the user that you may want to pull from, and you have to be really specific about what that context is and then what is their in the moment intent, because their in the moment intent might be slightly different from the overall user context. And you need to provide both of those with the right labeling to the model so that the models understand that, oh, this user is this type of profile. In this moment, they're attempting to do X. So when your agents can then get that information, in addition to surfacing or giving the agents the right information from your catalog, you're going to see higher conversion rates because you're going to be able to recommend more relevant products to that particular user. And then, of course, for ROI, any ROI calculation that you're doing, you want to make sure that you're being really efficient with the different models that you're using. So the more accurate you are the first time, the more accurate you are with that first question the user has asked, the less likely you are to expend more money on follow-up questions. So you want to get really precise and accurate with as early in the conversation with the user as possible. And I think as it relates to common hurdles, I think that it's really important to keep in mind traditional techniques for search as well as these newer techniques, it's very easy to get distracted by all of the really fancy new models that are coming out. Those are really great models for very specific purposes, and they're even better when they're paired with more traditional search mechanisms. In fact, those mechanisms are turning out to be critical and a must-have for a robust AI program. So being able to balance the really cool new models with the tried and true approaches that continue to be and are growing in prevalence, I think is really important, and is definitely something to keep an eye out for.
I love that. I have a personal motto in my life where life is and, it's never or. So it's important to balance the two in an attempt to keep this under an hour. All other questions can be answered by reaching out to these amazing panelists. I will let each of you let us know how the audience can reach you. I would think LinkedIn, but I'll let you guys go. Carrie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great, Carrie Rich, and thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks for joining the conversation. You were phenomenal. Mike, where can we find you?
Yeah, same LinkedIn. I think I'm under Michael Callahan now, so you'll find me there. Reach out, and this has been a great conversation. Appreciate all the thoughts and everything from everyone.
Thanks, Mike. And you, Fanny?
Same thing, Fani Main, LinkedIn. I'm active, so please reach out, ask any questions. Like we're all learning, so it's this part of learning. Please reach out and yeah, look forward to it. Thanks for the coordination.
No worries. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. I don't have as much knowledge as these folks, but I can answer some of your more fun questions. Thank you to everybody for joining us. And thank you to the three of you. We really, really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks.